Prime Minister, with your stewardship, this is the golden age. Now let's see if the banks will make it also happen. Because we all want love. You got, can I have the slides? How do I get my slides? Oh, I do that myself. How do I get the presentation? It's there, it's not here. I have a beautiful presentation if you just come up here and have a look here. Ooh. Can you go to the next slide? Lovely. There's one slide I would like you to see. This also doesn't work, but we'll get used to that. The red line is the GDP. And I'm taking it from 1999 to 2000. See what is the GDP growth on the red line. See the diamond jewelry retail sales on the green line. Ladies and gentlemen, the gap between GDP growth and diamond jewelry growth is enormous. And just to assume, first of all, it shows how important branding is going to be, and then we have to get the act together and we have to do something about it. But you can actually see that the diamond content in retail, which is the black line, is higher than the green line of the diamond jewelry retail, meaning we are still very prominent in the retail, and even getting more prominent in the retail. Look at the inflation, which is much lower than the GDP. But we have a problem. And I don't want you want to walk out of here thinking that GDP goes up, demand will go up for diamond, because nobody can show me that that is actually happening. And I just wanted to correct, to make a full note on yesterday. We have work to do. Next slide, please. We have seen this yesterday. And also for the benefit of the Commerce Secretary, I want to put it once more. We are the middle sector, the diamond sector. And this is what goes in and this is what goes out. But now we're talking about banking. Have a look. Our annual rough purchases are about, in 2013, is about 15.5. But the bank borrowing is about the same. Of course, it's not all the financing for rough. It's most of the financing. 65% of the financing goes to accounts receivables. But rough is being financed. The rough suppliers, Mr. Secretary, the rough suppliers are the only people in this business that don't give credit. Everybody else has to give credit, not them. I was sorry. The interesting part, the Bain report, and I recommend it to you, that was published last week, or actually this week, has a fantastic section on financing. The Bain report says something very nice. In the short term, they say, and even mid-term, this industry may need to be financed from the downstream and from the upstream. I never thought I would promote the Bain report, but I would hope that the producers will see it. Because that is one of the reasons that we have so many problems. The Bain report also points out exactly how much profits the miners are making, but let's not do that at this age. We see here that the bank borrowing at the moment is around, we put it on 14.8, I would say it's about $14.5 billion, and there's about another $1 billion in securitizations outstanding in addition to it. Let me see. Okay, so you do it. It's working. Good. So you You're really cute. Okay. You know, I just want to put up the price movements of employees only because of the financing aspect. At the moment, and that's really the bad news, so inventories are growing. Inventories have become enormous. And we think if we talk about a $15 billion loss that gets in and $22 billion gets out, we think that in the Polish inventories around 8 billion, correct? 8 billion, and that is a lot. And we see also that expectations are of softening prices. And that means that people are offloading at a loss to avoid the radar loss later. We have to change the perception, we have to change our attitude, we have to change the market. In a rising market, things are much better. But in the market that goes down, of course, banks are more cautious than before. You're magic, and you have to show more. But it's so important, and I think that this is time that we say this publicly, because those are things that we all know, but we never talk about. The industry growth has been fueled almost entirely by bank borrowing. If there is more liquidity, if there is more working capital, we see that there is more goods, there's more purchases. It's a one-to-one, and it's amazing. And that shows the importance. We will not grow without having the money. And we will not have the money if we don't have the margins. I mean, it's just a vicious cycle that goes on and on. But let's face it and let's not do it as if it is not the case. We need the money. Now, you are lucky in India that you have state banks. You are very lucky in India because the government will have it. And I show you later on a slide that shows that worldwide in India you have over 40 banks financing the industry versus about 5 in the rest of the world. And where it's increasing in India and where it's decreasing in the rest of the world. All in line with what is logic if you go into all the names. Here you see the same thing that before. Yesterday we showed the value addition, that is the black line, is really not going up. It is all the time moving around the 4 and the 6 and 7 billion. Don't look at those peaks that you have in the crisis because they have a different situation of the zone. But the value addition of this industry remains fairly constant. But look, stocks, and stocks means really accounts receivables and inventory. Stocks and bank debt go up in tandem. But in the last year, we see that the stocks and receivables are going like this, and the bank debt goes like this. That is not good. And the bank debt should have gone lower. And there are all kinds of reasons for this. Again, this is our analysis, and I hope that bankers, if bankers can show me that I'm wrong on this, that's the first line I would love to repair. But that is the situation. But again, it is a one and one. This came from the Bain & Company report, and since the Bain & Company report is also very much based on our research, our meaning TC Limited, I took the liberty to put this up. If we look at the total pipeline, we see that the producers are financed from corporate financing, equity financing, etc. Retailers very much so as well. But the diamond industry is almost 100% depending on diamond financing. We have not been able to generate other financing. Yes, I said already before, there is $1 billion outstanding in securitizations and other things, but basically it is diamond financing, and I personally don't think that you'll see a major change in that in the years ahead. We have to be nice to our bankers, but our bankers have to be nice to us as well. I very much believe it's a two-way street. The last introductory remark about the situation of the financing, we can see here how we have 60 banks in India. There's a Bain says, I said 40, but that was 50 in the middle. They're little small banks, we don't really know. And then we have 4 major banks and a few others really. Now the younger Diamond Bank is out. We don't want to talk about it today. They were supposed to be in an early draft of this program. They appeared and they didn't appear. Their exit is a fact, but not only that, it's high speed they try to collect all the outstandings. And that is not fair to the industry. You cannot say within 2-3 months or 4 months just pay back. That doesn't work that way. And they were a considerable part of the industry, and from some of the treasures really comes from the withdrawal here. The withdrawal should have been, and I still hope it's not too late, more gradually. This is the situation here, and now I'm trying to call on the panel members to come up at the podium, because like yesterday, we had all the producers here, and we had about 90% or so of the world, so 89 of the world production on the podium. Now we're going to have, I would say, most of all the diamond financing in the podium, and I would invite our friends from every number, Standard Chartered, Howard, and others who are scheduled to be here to come up to the podium and convince you or help, give them a chance to convince you that they are really out there because they want to help the industry. So if we give them a hand, Eric and Brad, thank you.
The bank had 28 branches in 21 cities, offering a comprehensive range of financial products and services with more than 6,000 people. Talking about employment, of which about 25% women, talking about diversity. But that's history, unfortunately. But a history we can be very proud of and build upon again, if when possible. I had to dig deep in history as well, and to be able to put the current affairs of our industry on the financing side into perspective. And I ran into an advice to bankers dating from 1863 on the slide here. And that came from Mr. Hugh McCulloch. And you might wonder who's Mr. Hugh McCulloch. Well, he was at the time the controller of the currency and later Secretary of the Treasury in the United States. And his advice to all national banks in the US was reprinted in the Wall Street Journal on March 17, 1933. We all know what happened in those days, the Great Depression. But it's interesting to read some of the paragraphs. I'm not going to quote all of them, but some of the paragraphs Mr. McCulloch wrote in 1863, remember, 150 years ago. Let no loans be made that are not secured beyond a reasonable contingency. Do nothing to foster and encourage speculation. Give facilities only to legitimate payment transactions. Insist on payment of all paper at maturity. Distribute your loans rather than concentrate them in a few hands. Large loans to a single individual or firm, although sometimes proper and necessary, are generally judicious and frequently unsafe. Large borrowers are apt to control the bank, and when this is the relation between a bank and its customer, it's not difficult to decide which in the end will suffer. Remember, I'm still quoting from 1863. For every dollar that a bank loans above its capital, its managers are under the strongest obligations to its creditors, as well as to its stockholders, to keep constantly controlled. Treat your customers liberally. It goes two ways. Treat your customers liberally, bearing in mind the fact that the bank prospers as its customers prosper, but never permit the customer to dictate your policy. If you have reason to distrust the integrity of a customer, close his accounts. Never deal with a rascal under the impression that you can prevent him from cheating you. This risk, in such cases, is greater than the profits. The capital, I'm still quoting and then I stop quoting, the capital of a bank should be a reality, not a fiction, and should be owned by those who have money to lend and not by borrowers. Pursue a straightforward, upright, legitimate banking business. Never be tempted by the prospect of large returns to do anything but what may be properly done under the law. Well, I stopped quoting, but so far the quotes, and I think we all recognize it. It sounds a bit harsh, but this is the reality we've been going through over the last few years. So the conclusion in the Wall Street Journal in 1933 was that these ideas of Mr. McCulloch were still applicable in those years, particularly those years before the Great Depression. But moreover, that these ideas were no less significant for bank borrowers than for bank officers. And that's where I think Chaim was referring to as well. We have this common responsibility. And I really believe this conclusion is still valid in 2014 and starting of the golden age going forward. So here we come to the key of my address to you. Apart from lessons to be learned from the past, we're in this together. Both banks, as industry players, have a shared responsibility to keep the finance levels to the industry attractive and at the right levels and conditions. But the parties can and will have to make their own choices. It's a free world. So the formula to bankability is very simple. And I would really like you to remember that. Bankability for us is the sum of the profitability and transparency. Bankability is the sum of profitability plus transparency. Profitability speaks for itself. Bottom line versus just chasing top line results, improved asset conversion cycles, better efficiencies and innovation in manufacturing, and advanced purchase strategies are key examples. Destocking and reducing non-value-added trading will be essential to the future. De-risk and de-leverage balance sheets. Please mind in this context, the end consumer market growth seems to be single digit, as we saw the figures earlier. That's a worry. And we know there's still excess inventory. Recycled diamonds are flowing into the market rapidly. So the question for the producers is how to manage sales carefully to avoid excess output. Transparency, and remember bankability, is the sum of profitability and transparency. Transparency means with around 2 or 3 billion less external funding gradually. A slow kind of deflate of the finance bubble. Chaim showed the figures of the last 10 years or so. Also outside of India, there are not many financiers active anymore, particularly because the industry, from a macro perspective, is not that large. Let's not forget that, we saw the figures too. But also, the industry has not polished itself sufficiently to make it attractive. And personally, I believe the challenge of the consumer interest in the end product is much larger than the challenge we have for bankability. But I'm positive and pessimistic sometimes, I say. And like I was referring to the message from the US Treasury in 1863, history always repeats itself. There we should learn from it. Like I said too, Abraham was active for almost 100 years in India, and I'm sure we will be there for the next 100 years. India is undergoing a massive turnaround and a new leadership, and we hope to be part of the turnaround. Just the mere evolution of the creation of a middle class in India will bring above average growth for the next 20 years or so. And I'm sure the diamond and jewelry industry will continue to both contribute and benefit from such a growth. So the future is yours. We love to stay part of it, and we thank our clients to make it all happen. Thank you.
I think we should have a taste for history as well, because I'm going to be looking back into history a little bit. But, distinguished delegates, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity and the honour to address the World Diamond Conference. And my name's Howard Davis. It's a real pleasure to have so many familiar and friendly faces in the audience, but for those of you who don't know me, I head up commercial development for the De Beers group of companies. And I joined De Beers 25 years ago as a rough diamond buyer. And I'd like to open my presentation by introducing you to one of the most important phrases I learned when I first started to buy rough diamonds for De Beers back in the early 1990s. And that phrase is Mazal Bracha. It's a Hebrew phrase. Not everyone in the room is a Hebrew speaker, so let me explain. It means good luck and a blessing. Now, I learned that when I was buying diamonds, even worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, the only contract I needed was simply to look the seller in the eye and shake his hand and say the phrase Mazal Bracha. And that simple phrase was more than a gentleman's agreement. It had the force of an unbreakable contract of trust. Trust was everything. And back then, that was simply how the diamond industry seemed to go about its business. No one seemed to write anything down. Everything seemed to run on the basis of Mazal Bracha. And it's a convention that went all the way up to De Beers and it sells to the site holders. It wasn't until 2003 that De Beers introduced its first written site holder contract. And when I first started to have meetings with the diamond industry's